Who just straight up disappeared? One of my cousins. She was under a ton of stress, difficult divorce, sick parent, hard job. And one day she took the kids to school and no one ever saw her again. Nobody has ever been found, but there also hasn't been anyone applying for work with her social security number either, so we don't know what happened to her. Her little brother has since died. Her oldest child is about to start college. I wish she knew how much her absence is felt.
Wow, that's rough. Do you think it was foul play or do you think she left for a new start elsewhere?
We think she had a mental break and checked out. Maybe she has a new identity, maybe she doesn't know who she is, and maybe she's happy somewhere off-grid. It's been over 10 years now, so I don't expect we'll ever know. Serious. What is the most terrifying true crime case that you've heard or read about? Hands down the East Area Rapist. Imagine this man who stalks around neighborhoods at night, peering into windows, systematically narrowing down victims. He then calls your phone, just breathing and making no noise. He creeps around in the dark, waiting until you're alone. And then he breaks in your house when you're not home, and preps the house. He unlocks a locked window. Or he leaves a garage door ajar. And when you get home, as he knows your routine, he sneaks in, wakes you up in your bed, binds you, rapes, or kills. Pilfers through your house and leaves. He did this to dozens of women before he ever actually killed anyone. And then he began to rape and kill. He had over 50 rape victims, at least 13 murder victims that we know of. He was also likely behind the ransacking of dozens of homes. And his identity was a complete mystery. No one ever caught him in his time. He was actually finally identified decades later, and was convicted when he was in his 70s. But this was merely a wildly lucky break in a decades-old cold case. He came close to living out his days completely getting away with it. The story is harrowing and definitely the stuff of nightmares for anyone who is ever afraid that someone is looking in through their window. What is the scariest story you know that is 100% true? I would call it creepy more than scary, but my mom's friend had a small house and lived alone. She noticed weird things. A batch of soup depleting faster than usual, missing eggs, damp towels in the hamper when she hadn't used any, extra dishes in the dishwasher, etc. This went on for months. She thought she was just being forgetful. One day she heard some thumping around in her attic and went to investigate. She found some makeshift living quarters. Small radio, hot plate, sleeping bag, pillow, food wrappers, etc. She called the cops who came to keep an eye on the place. They ended up catching a homeless man climbing a tree, trying to sneak into her attic window. He had been doing this almost daily. He would wait for her to go to work, then go downstairs and help himself to food and amenities. The funny part about this story is they got to know each other throughout the ordeal, and the guy was actually very respectful, just down on his luck. She didn't press charges, instead, let him move in, helped him get a job, and he lived in the attic until he got back on his feet. Creepy shit with a happy ending. Who's the stupidest person you've ever met, and what story perfectly sums up their stupidity? My brother and I were in the kitchen one day as teenagers. My brother was filling the sink to wash dishes. When the sink was nearly full, he went to turn the tap off, but it wouldn't budge, so the water kept flowing. I tried turning it too, but with no success. This is when the panic set in. The level of the water was rising fast and we didn't want to flood the kitchen. He took big saucepans out of the press to fill with water to keep things from overflowing, while I was in a frantic scramble under the sink trying to find the mains to turn it off there. I couldn't find it. Now really panicking, I took over the pot filling duty and my brother went running off to look for Dad as quick as he could. Dad came running in with my brother while we were shouting at him about looking for the mains. Dad just came over to the sink and pulled the plug out of the hole, letting all the water down the drain. Ha ha. Were you ever that 1 in 1 million? If so, what's your story? No sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crush. I was on an old PO2, famous for being very safe and uncrushable, on a tour of the desert in western China when I was like 7. My father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash, 50 kilometers from the town, airport, on the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters. They plant greens in the desert to protect towns from sandstorm. A lot of people live in these desert towns in China do this. Found me on their way picking up a shipment, and the only reason they looked was because they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand and went off the road to test. Edit. First thing first, according to legends, 15 minutes, I never tested it though. So, according to my dad's, the theory that I might have lived was because the plane was mostly made out of fabrics and wood. So when the plane crashed, the front half collapsed and took the majority of the impact. Though I got knocked out, I was probably covered under the wreckage and in the shades. It cooled me off enough to survive for a day or so. Doctors of Reddit. What is your most surprising, I can't believe I need to have this conversation with an adult, story? Not a doctor, yet, but an tech for 2 years. Mom comes in with her baby plus 2 more older kids. Complains that the baby hasn't pooped in a while and won't stop crying. As I'm settling them in with one of the nurses, the baby is bawling, like opera singer lungs bawling. Suddenly mom whips out a white plastic shopping bag and sticks an end in the kid's mouth, says, "This is the only way she stops crying." Nurse and I share a look and immediately order an emergency x-ray on the kid's stomach. Turns out she had ingested a good amount of these bags and it was blocking up in her stomach. Big deal, potentially life-threatening. When we confront the mom about her baby feeding habits, her only words of defense are, "Well, I checked all over the bag and I couldn't find anything that said, non-edible." TLDR. Mom had been letting her baby teeth on plastic bags because she didn't know they weren't edible. What are your best examples of people cheating the system? I'll start. I work in a typical office building, but today I saw something interesting. Lazy coworker number 11 has been leaving around lunchtime to go to the gym. Except I had to get something out of my car and I saw her, in her workout clothes, eating out of a tub of fried chicken. I didn't say anything, but she walked back in 15 minutes later saying how sore she would be tomorrow. She works out every day. My boss has a policy that if you're going to work out you don't have to clock out, which means lazy coworker number 11 essentially gets paid to eat fried chicken in a jogging suit in her minivan. As annoyed as I am, I'm also slightly impressed that she thought of this. What's your "I'm glad I tried it, but never again" story?
Hot air balloon. I was 4,500 feet in the air for an hour and a half with nothing separating me from a horrifying death but a wicker basket.
I tell everyone to avoid hot air balloons for very good reason. My mom, 2 aunts, and grandfather fell out of one at the 1998 New Mexico Hot Air Balloon Festival. They all survived, thankfully. One lady who they didn't know died though. The balloon got caught up in a huge gust of wind, hit 2 sets of power lines, and then the basket separated from the balloon. They fell 30 feet to the ground. My mom shattered her pelvis, my aunts both fractured parts of their spines and broke their feet, and my grandfather broke his neck. Thankfully they all made full recoveries. My mom limps, but that's it.
Dan, glad they all made a decent recovery. I'm sorry to say they are going to feel that one day. Fuck. Pelvic fractures in particular are bad fucking news. Funkily fucking fuck. Fuck.
For everyone but my mom, you never would have guessed they were in a bad accident. I think it took multiple surgeries. I was only 2 when it happened, so I don't remember it at all, to repair my mom's pelvis. What is your Tinder horror story? A little backstory. A few years ago I was dating this girl and her father really hated me. Which was a bit odd as most parents love me, or at least lie about it real well. He was just a huge prick and I always called him on his shit. Anyways, her parents got divorced, we broke up a few months later, etc, etc. Fast forward to around a year later. Me and girl from Tinder were dating for a few months and things were starting to get serious. We're at the point where she wants me to meet her family. Mother, stepfather, little sister. Why not? I have no problems meeting them, let's do it, I said. She told me how excited her stepdad was to meet me. As it turns out we both happen to be Kansas City Chiefs fans. Well, fuck me if it wasn't the same asshole father of my ex-girlfriend. What is one secret your parents can never know? I was 10-ish and my dad had just painted the boiler room door orange in our basement. My younger brother and I were pushing each other around on a skateboard in basement and my dad warned us, "Don't you dare hit this door with your skateboard." 15 minutes later I'm picking my brother up from the ground and looking at a hole in my dad's orange door caused by said skateboard. Definitely not telling dad. Instead I grab a piece of orange construction paper and a glue stick to patch the hole. It matched surprisingly well. 27 years later that construction paper is still holding strong and I have never heard a word about it from my pop.